recorded. I think if like hopefully everyone feels comfortable with that. If you have questions or comments that you don't feel comfortable sharing, knowing that it's being recorded, feel free to reach out to me after. I would love to connect with you. But also, I would really love for this to be participatory. So feel free to raise your hand or chime in and just start talking. I would love to hear your voices. And I want to give one other caveat. Yes, I am in rabbinical school, and but that doesn't give me any authority to talk about anything. Danielle, don't correct me on that. But also tarot is something that I'm really passionate about. Torah is something that I'm really passionate about, but I'm not an expert. There might be other people in this room that feel like they are experts on Torah and tarot, and your voice is really valid, and I would love to hear it. And if you don't feel like an expert, that's okay. Me either. We're going to learn together. So I would love to start out with a discussion of what is Torah. And I'm not asking that to be like funny. I genuinely am curious to hear from people. I'll stop sharing my screen for a second. Um, oops, right. I have to go back to, we're going to keep sharing the screen. Apparently, I don't remember how to use Zoom either. But I would love to hear from people. What is Torah? Like, throw it into the chat, or if you want to speak up, what does Torah mean to you when you think about Torah? What is it? Yeah, Ariel, you're raising your hand.
Yeah, for me, I like the wide definition, like not just the scrolls, but experience or knowledge or wisdom or a knowing of some kind.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Any other thoughts I'm seeing in the chat? This too, like this too is Torah, instruction, teaching, guidance, a guide, the whole of Jewish teaching, a way of life. Anything else, folks, want to share? What is Torah?
Um, Sometimes we talk about little T Torah and big T Torah. And that's something that's been meaningful to me because while big T Torah can be, the actual Torah, the stories we learn, like how we interpret them, all those things. I've also been taught that, little T Torah is our own Torah and like the lives we live and how those stories can build on each other and we can learn from each other in that way. So that's always been like a meaningful translation for me.
I love that. Thanks, Alan. I'm seeing also in the chat timeless teachings and stories that can be used to understand ourselves, others in the world, the unfolding of revelation through living and learning. These are really beautiful definitions. I'm seeing many themes around Jewish. One, that's like a word that's popping up: wisdom, learning, teaching, the thorough instruction of history, birth, rebirth, and growth, Hashem's guidance. I love that guidance is a word that's coming up. Revelation is a word. We're celebrating Shavuot, which is when we all gather together at Mount Sinai to have the Torah revealed to us. We all received this wisdom, guidance, learning together. And I think, as we're all seeing, another definition of Torah is the recounting of events that occurred in Judaism throughout time based on the author's interpretation. There's no one way of defining Torah. And I think that's really beautiful. Torah is ours, it is in us, it is given to us. We get to claim it every day, we get to redefine it every day. And I want to hold on to that definition as we then move into thinking about tarot, because my hope in this conversation, tarot is not Torah. Very much not. That is not something I'm trying to have us learn tonight. But tarot can be a source of guidance. It can be a source of revelation. It can be a source of wisdom. And I think that's really beautiful that those sources can come for us in many different ways. And so I want to go back to the comment in the chat from Emily that this too is Torah. I love this notion because it implies that Torah can hold everything. And I think that's really important. That's really important for me. So in this notion, tarot is not Torah, but this too is Torah. What we can gain from tarot is maybe another way of us gaining little pieces of Torah as well. So we're going to hold on to this understanding of Torah. And we're now going to go back to the presentation. We're going to talk a little bit about tarot. So, what is tarot? It's likely that tarot originated in the 14th century as tarocchi, card decks for playing games in Italy. So this was like any other deck of cards that you maybe would have had. There were cards, the Fool and 21 other characters were added to the existing 4 suits in a deck, which included batons, coins, cups, and swords. And these were used by people to play games, just like any of us might play card games. Tarot cards were used for playing games. But in the places where card games weren't as popular at the time, occultists began to link the images on the cards with divination, cartomancy, like thinking that maybe there's more to this beyond playing games. Um, it's interesting to think about that because I can't imagine playing a card game with tarot cards anymore. So yeah, really fascinating. Okay, so what is in a deck of tarot? This is just hopefully making it easy for everyone to understand. Again, if this is your intro to tarot, this is like a very high level understanding of tarot. There's lots of great guides online, books that you can buy at fun bookstores. If you buy yourself a tarot deck, often there are guides in the deck itself that can give you an outline. But so in the tarot, as I was just alluding to in the Tarot cards, there are the major arcana and the minor arcana. So we'll first start talking about the major arcana. So these are 21 numbered cards and one unnumbered card, the Fool. And they all sort of represent life lessons or major archetypal themes that can influence your life or the journey that our souls are on at any given moment. And so there are some folks that say you can follow the Fool throughout the journey through all of the other cards. So the Fool goes and interacts with Temperance, the Hermit, the Star, the Moon, Death, the Wheel of Fortune, and the Fool's journey ends at the World. And theoretically, once the Fool reaches the World, he has like learned, or she or they have learned from their new teachers and have learned new life lessons along the way. I've actually never tracked tarot as a story in that way, but I think that's really beautiful to think about it. These might be some of the cards that you're familiar with. These might be cards you're not familiar with. That's okay. But these are sort of the major figures of tarot, so to speak. And the images on this slide feature the Rider-Waite deck. I'll get into that in a little bit. Okay. Next, so we now have the minor arcana. So these are sort of like the suits you can imagine: diamonds, hearts, spades, clubs, just like that, except for it's cups, swords, wands, and pentacles or coins. And each of these suits is connected to one of the 4 elements. And you can sort of think about each of the elements in the same way that maybe for our bodies, our souls, our minds are all connected to the different elements. So too are the different suits in the minor arcana. So we have the cups. I have featured the image of the 3 of Cups in the bottom right corner of the images. Cups are associated with water. So they're connected to our emotions, the emotional level of consciousness. So that could be love, feelings, relationships, connections, all of that can come up with the cups. And I'll just note for all of the minor arcana, it starts with an ace, goes all the way through the numbers, and it has queen and king. Instead of a jack, it has a page. Different tarot decks also have different names for cards, so I can talk about the different variations, but generally speaking, that's how it all flows. And while each of the suits, you'll see no matter the number, they'll all be connected somehow with cups. They'll be connected on an emotional level of in some way. The threes, let's say, so right here, I'm looking at the 3 of Cups. The 3 of Swords might also be connected to the 3 of Cups on the same level that all the threes are going to follow a journey, all the aces will follow a journey, etc. So you can pick up on a lot of patterns in tarot. I have not memorized any of the tarot cards. I use guides to read them. I think everyone should use guides if that is what you're comfortable with. But maybe you are much better at memorization than I am, and you have these memorized and internalized, and that's beautiful. Okay, so that's the cups. Swords are connected to the element of air. They deal with the level of consciousness around the mind, intellect, our thoughts, our attitudes, our beliefs. Swords are double-sided, so we can think about that also. Whenever we think about our attitudes, our beliefs, there's always 2 sides to that and sort of 2 edges. Wands are connected to fire. So they're associated with sort of this like primal energy. This is where spirituality can come up. This is where inspiration comes up. Our ambition, our creativity, our strength, our intuition, all is wrapped up in wands. And finally, the coins are connected to earth. We can feel it, we can touch it. So it deals with the physical or external level of consciousness. This could be finances, work, things around health, creativity. And you'll also notice these are not static. So, like, emotional consciousness will also show up maybe with wands, or when we're thinking about the things that make us feel creative. It might not just be something that we can touch with our hands. It might be something that we feel in our hearts or something that we're thinking about. So, nothing is static in tarot. But when you potentially do a tarot reading, depending on the card that you pull up, that might mean something for you is coming up specifically related to creativity or specifically related to relationships or something like that. I'm just going to note that I'm not totally keeping track to chat. So if you have a question, feel free to voice it. I'll try and check the chat periodically. But I do see there's a question for later. Many of my peers, Jewish and not, feel tarot is a form of idolatry and paganism and want nothing to do with it. Are there strategies you found helpful in helping others not to be so hesitant? Amazing question. Thank you so much for asking that, Samantha. I am going to get into that in a little bit. So yes, for later, but great, great question. Okay, we're just going to continue with the basics of tarot for now, and then we'll move on. So, okay, tarot and Judaism. In 1909, the Rider-Waite Smith deck was first published. I have this deck with me. I have like a big size, which is kind of fun. So this deck is one of the most commercially successful decks in as the basis for like almost all tarot today. This is probably the most common deck that you will find at any store or when you're looking at buying tarot, or even if you're online looking at guides, you're on Pinterest looking for pictures. It's very hard to not find these illustrations. They were illustrated by Pamela Coleman Smith, working with A.E. Waite. And specifically, A.E. Waite was highly influenced by Christianized Kabbalistic images. So essentially, he appropriated many Kabbalistic images and learnings into his tarot deck. So that is something to think about. I am going to feature 3 of the cards from this deck that have specific Jewish imagery. Again, we can, uh, there's something about like when I read Torah that I might feel a piece of, do I say tarot or Torah? This is going to happen the whole time where I switch the words up. When I read tarot, I might feel a piece of Torah is illuminated for me. And I might even see an image and think, wow, this is really reminding me of, for example, when I see the 3 of cups, like what we were looking at before, I can't help but think about Miriam and the women dancing after crossing the sea. And that card is specifically about female friendship and relationship. But that's for me, like projecting Torah onto the tarot. That's not necessarily inherent to the tarot itself. Whereas you will see appropriated images. So it's something for us to think about. I want to plug the question of what does it mean for Jews to reclaim something that was once appropriated, and specifically with tarot, specifically as Samantha alluded to, something that can be tied with avodah zarah or like idol worship, or sort of this like inherently not Jewish, like the opposite of something that is Jewish. What does it mean to reclaim it or to see ourselves in that? So I'll plant that question, would be curious for us to discuss, but I want to just go through and highlight a few of the specific cards with these appropriated imagery. So here we have the High Priestess from this deck. The High Priestess is one of the major arcana archetypal images. She is connected to intuition, sacred knowledge, the divine feminine, and you can see in the background pomegranates. Pomegranates are not like only a Jewish symbol, but they are a very Jewish symbol. And especially when you can see the scroll that she's holding says Torah, T-O-R-A. You'll notice on another card that Torah is spelled without an H at the end. I don't have an answer for why that is. But certainly to associate pomegranates and Torah together feels very Jewish. The pillars also, according to certain guides, are connected to the pillars of the temple, and also the veil that she is wearing. Many people connect this to the parochet, which is the curtain that covers the Aron Kodesh, the ark where the 10 Commandments are held. So really Jewish imagery. We do not have to dig deep to see that. But also Jews didn't make this, and in fact, it was like appropriated. So just something for us to hold as we look at that card. Um, okay, so the next card I'll feature is the Wheel of Fortune. The Wheel of Fortune is also part of the major arcana. It can allude to good luck, karma, life cycles, destiny, whatever we can think of with the wheel of fortune. This one feels like very overt. You can see in the middle of the wheel, Yud He Vav He, which is the name of God. I would assume that if someone Jewish was making a tarot deck, they would probably not print this name of God on a tarot deck because it is usually reserved for our like holy texts, the Siddur, our prayer books written in the Torah, definitely not written on tarot. So this feels like a very in your face example of what we're talking about. And you can also see the letters Tora or Taro, Torah, tarot, whichever direction you want to read it. And again, connecting to the scroll that we saw on the lap of the high priestess, we're seeing the word of Torah, tarot again. Hannah, you have your hand up.
Just an offering here. I was introduced to tarot by a Kabbalist, who learned about Sephir Road and Tree of Life and tarot through her Episcopalian father, who was a high priest in the Episcopalian Church. And she taught that more directly than this version, 22 cards of the major arcana, 22 Hebrew letters. There is a deck there is at least one deck that I'm aware of that has the Hebrew letters on it. The Fool begins with Aleph. And that on the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, the geometric one, there are 22 paths. You can lay out each of the tarot on one of the paths. And I was taught to never call them cards, to call them keys, that they're keys to self-understanding. So it just puts another layer on it. And if you lay out the major arcana in their order, I hadn't thought specifically or wasn't taught about following the Fool's journey, but if you follow them in order, it does present a template of the spiritual journey, very much so. And there was just one other piece I wanted to bring in. The template, the spiritual journey, the 22 keys. Oh yes, somehow it came to her that not that the major arcana were used, that the whole thing became during the times of at least the Spanish Inquisition, people could be studying Torah and studying the mysteries and Kabbalah. And when they were raided, they just like, oh, officer, we're just playing cards. That it was an overt, a way to study Torah and not worry about getting caught. Maybe you were going to get there, but I just wanted to offer that.
It's okay. Thank you so much for sharing that, Hannah. Specifically, what you were alluding to, the last piece about the playing the cards and being able to sort of like hide it as a practice. I follow them on Instagram, but they also have a blog online, Jew Witches, so JEWITCHESS. They have a whole article with a lot of sources that they've cited around the history of tarot, its connection to Judaism, if it's not connected to Judaism, and they specifically highlight that story as well. So if folks are interested in learning more, I highly recommend them as a resource and sharing more background. So just highlighting one more card with this imagery, just showing the devil. Really, I just want to point out the hand gesture, the Birkat Kohanim. Obviously, we maybe recognize that from Spock, Leonard Nimoy introducing that to the Star Trek world, but it also is in the tarot world as well, and really interesting to see that image here on the tarot. So I just want to talk a little bit now about Jewish reclamation. I'm calling it reclamation. I don't think we have to use that language, but I saw in the chat some folks were already talking about this. Ephraim Moses Lillian was an artist. He was an Art Nouveau artist in the 20th century. He helped found the Betzalel Art School in Israel, and his artwork has been used as the Lillian deck. So you can see in the corner, it's beautiful artwork. I recommend checking out much of his art. It's been created into a sort of tarot deck. It is not necessarily needed to use for tarot. Again, it can be used as a deck for, I like the language of keys, Hannah, that you shared. These cards, these decks, these keys can offer wisdom, offer guidance, and this imagery is like very deeply Jewish. It's also funny, Lillian was very into Theodore Herzl, and so some of his artwork is like Theodore Herzl fan fiction in a way, fan art. So it's like fun to see his face in some of the cards. I also have featured this is an image from the artist Jessica Tamar Deutsch, who has created Jewish mystical cards around the symbols and fruits from Tu B'Shvat. And so this is a deck that you can get, and each card can, again, give you insight, wisdom, whatever you want it to be. What do you do with tarot? That's a question that I haven't answered, but I've maybe been alluding to it. There's like no one way of using tarot. Some of my personal practices include doing readings for friends. So I will have my deck of tarot and my friends who questioning, seeking, whatever it is, maybe they want to have a check-in on where they are. They're at a crossroads with a big life decision. Should I move? Should I not move? What's feeling right? What's feeling wrong? And we can use tarot as a sort of way to guide, to provide answers. I like to say that tarot is actually not telling you anything that you don't already know for yourself. It's just externalizing a voice that's already inside. Um, Maybe someone wants a check-in on a birthday, or I love to do readings around Rosh Chodesh, following the moon cycle and milestones. And my roommate and I have started a tradition for the last 2 years where we draw a key or a card for every day for the month of Elul. And it allows us to just like check in with ourselves. Where are we coming from in the last year, and where are we going into to prepare for Rosh Hashanah? It's been a really beautiful tradition that the two of us have shared with each other, and I'm really excited to keep seeing that. And it's fun to see some of the cards pop up multiple times, and so it's fun to notice like, oh, this is something we really need to hold on to as we're in this month of Elul. um, when I do readings, and you can see this like again online, the internet is a great resource. There are lots of different ways of doing tarot readings. So sometimes I've said I'll pull one card and just let that card speak to me. Often, if I'm doing readings for friends, I do a 3 card spread, and I will often frame it as a blessing, challenge, action. So let's say a friend is coming to me saying, I am at a crossroads with work. I have a really difficult project. I'm not sure what to do. I just want to check in and see where things are. We'll see, what's the blessing? What's your strength in this moment that's going to help guide you forward? What's the challenge? How can we articulate what's feeling like a sticky point? And what's the action? How do we get forward? How does your blessing, how do you motivate that and move it forward? But we also might do a past, present, future reading. You can also see there are people who do like a 10 card spread, an 11 card spread. I think those are really great if it's for a big milestone and you're wanting a life check-in. But lots of ways around framing. And I'll just show the different tarot decks that I have. So I have, as I already showed, the Rider Waite deck. I have as like a big deck. Another deck that I saw some folks talking about in the chat is the Marseille, I don't speak French, deck. This was printed in 1760. I specifically have the deck that was then adapted in 2010 by an Israeli like historian, Yoav Ben Dov. I specifically, this is my first deck that I bought, and it's because it had Hebrew on it. And so I said, oh, that's for me. And then I actually like learned more about tarot. So this is the first deck that I had. And then there's like so many different ways that people can use tarot as well. So I have this Muse tarot deck, and it has removed all the kings. So instead of kings, there are muses. And instead of the cups and the wands and the swords and the coins, it's emotions, inspiration, voices, and materials. So it's just a fun, different framing. And the artwork is like very modern, very colorful. And then, of course, my roommate is a huge cat person. And so we have cat tarot, and everything on the tarot are cats. So tarot can really be for anyone and everyone. Thank you to Samantha who put the article from Jewitches in the chat. I'm just seeing that. Before we continue, questions, comments, things that you know that you can teach me about tarot, I would love to hear it. Yeah, Emily, I see you're raising your hand.
Hi. Yes, I actually have embarked on a multi-year project reclaiming the Hermetic Tarot, which is this deck. Somebody I study martial arts with gave me this deck. They read tarot, and we're like, two people have tried to work with this deck and cannot. Maybe you can because you know the most about the stuff that's going on in this deck. And I said, because I know the most about the stuff going on in this deck, it makes no sense to me why all of these things are put together. Like when someone said there's decks with Hebrew letters that do the counting. This deck does that, except for the letter mem, they put a final mem, not a regular mem, on the corner of the card. So it's obviously fake. So I have been doing things like the lovers I turned into the Shekhinah and Kujibrihu from Kabbalah, and the uh the Ace of Wands is a lulav, and I would do things like make gematria matching the word cherev, which is sword, all that stuff, basically exploring how to combine like all of the imagery with the things that I saw that were on the images already, kind of like to align what I was seeing that the person drew and the Hebrew letters that they decided to nonsensically draw and what have you, and align it with Jewish mysticism and history. I made the devil card a Catholic priest, not like a priest, but like the devil's wearing Christian garb and that kind of thing, kind of like turnabout. So when you mentioned reclamation specifically, I got really excited. And I'm really glad that there's other people kind of doing that. This is my project, and it's nice to know that other people are doing that too. But thanks for letting me share it, because there aren't very many places that I can share this where everybody understands everything going on that I'm trying to talk about.
Emily, that's amazing. I would love if you ever want to chat more about it. I would love to. It sounds like many other people in this group would also love to hear more about the project that you're doing because it's incredible. And I think it's a really good segue back to, I think it was Samantha's question. I apologize if I'm misremembering who asked it in the chat around Avodah Zarah, idol worship. How do we get into this if it feels like it's maybe a no-no, or it's connected to paganism, or just connected to things that don't feel Jewish inherently? I think that I would be curious to hear how others would answer this question. My instinct, I think, goes a little bit to what Emily's talking about right now and what I was talking about before. One, I don't think that tarot is Torah. So I think that's an easy way to answer it, or to just acknowledge like this is not replacing. This is not instead of. I don't think that tarot. I actually think that tarot for me allows me to connect to the divine, certainly the divine feminine, but to what the divine is for me. I think that tarot is an access point in when Torah can sometimes feel really hard, or when I'm stuck with prayer and the words in the Siddur aren't helping me. But when I get to draw a tarot card and I see the sun and that brightness and the light inspires me, that feels like a way in. So I think that there, again, when we're using these words around like wisdom, guidance, things like that, I think that's a way of helping folks understand maybe the connection there. Yeah, I'm seeing Hannah put, I think rather than idol worship, the concern more directly is the law, no divination. Yeah, so I also think like I'm not using tarot to do magic or to divinate. Maybe that's what other people are using. I often find that when folks are connected to tarot, it really is just helping to put words or images to things that are already inside, an opportunity for, again, reframing. Yeah, Ari, your hand is up.
Yeah, I just appreciate what you shared, and for me, it does feel like Torah. Like I feel like for me, when I connect with the keys or the symbols, it there's like revelation that comes, there's connections that come, there are things that pop up that I don't feel like I have a conscious kind of it doesn't feel top down. It feels like very intuitive and in connection with and expansive. And I just love the idea of yeah, reclamation and all these variety of ways that it's been interpreted and reinterpreted and redrawn with different symbols for the time. Like it's ever evolving and ever changing. And I think for me, the Jewish bounds around what it is exactly what you said of like, I don't use it to fortune tell. And I always tell that to like anyone I'm reading, like this is not like me telling the future of anything. And if you have a question actually that's future oriented, I'll redirect it to the present of what is coming up, you know, now. And then it's a conversation. It's like what pops up for me, what pops up for you, what do you see in this, what do you connect to? And I was really inspired by the idea of the Marseille deck, the one that has all the Jewish symbols in it with the variation, like including bris stuff, like back in the 1500s, and the idea that that would be Jewish resistance in this place where you have to convert, otherwise you're going to be exiled. And how can you know, connect to and find really creative ways of keeping a tradition alive through oral history? And we don't know how that, you know, what that looked like, but I just love that idea, and I didn't know about it. I found out about it tonight actually, and I'm just very grateful for all this synchronicity that's popping up. And thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Ari. Lux, your hand is up.
Hi, yes, okay. Wonderful presentation so far. I just wanted to add to the conversation that something that I love about tarot is there's the idea that the deck you get is supposed to be given to you instead of something that you buy yourself. And that's something that's really coming to mind today on Shavuot. And I also wanted to share my personal favorite deck that was given to me by my mom, which is the Wild Unknown deck. Maybe other people have it as well, but it's very nature-based and also very symbolic. It's lacking in the Judaism, but I'm sure there's something in there. But yeah, I'm really thinking about how Torah gives us knowledge in the same way that tarot does. So thank you.
Thank you, Lux. And I appreciate that. I love that tradition that Torah, like the tarot, gets to be given to you, similar to how we receive Torah. We don't necessarily have to go out and acquire it, although we can. And what is that balance of both acquiring for ourselves and also standing open and ready to receive whenever we can get it. And to your point, like, I think also what makes tarot Jewish is if you are Jewish and you're choosing to read tarot, like that can also just be enough. We ourselves have so much Torah inside of us. And so if that Torah is what's coming up when we are reading tarot or when we're listening to Beyonce or when we're playing basketball or whatever it is, like, again, this too is Torah. And so it seems like there are many of us on the call who maybe connect to tarot as that connection point. Doesn't need to be the only one, but certainly a way in. Miriam, I see your hand is also up.
Yes, hi. I'm already in my pajamas, so I'm gonna keep the video off. But I actually just got my very first tarot deck today. I went to a vintage market in Somerville and I just saw it and was like, okay, great, this is Kismet. But I've been dabbling for a couple years with oracle cards, and I have been not wary of tarot, but like it felt like an extra an extra step when things are upside down or backwards, or there's a reverse in a way that Oracle doesn't have. And so I'm wondering if you have, or anybody has, any information on like the difference between Oracle and Tarot and how you understand the reverse in Tarot and things like that.
Yeah, thank you for asking. I have an Oracle deck and I have not used it. One of my dear friends, I think it's on the call, Natalie, gave it to me. I have not used it, so I can't speak directly to the difference between tarot and Oracle. If you know the difference, folks, feel free to put it in the chat. Miriam, I can also look into that later. Specifically around reverse, can I just repeat back to make sure I understood the question? Thinking about how tarot can be read both like upright or reversed and understanding the difference between them.
So, as far as I understand, and this also correct me if I'm wrong, if you flip a tarot card and it's upside down, it means the opposite of its original meaning. And if that's wrong, then please also correct me. But I'm curious how that, excuse me, is a part of the reading and like how you like engage with that.
Totally. Yeah, so different, this is kind of like I like to say it's up to the tarot reader's discretion. So there are people who, exactly as you said, Miriam, that depending on when you draw a card, so I'll just like have my deck. If I were to draw this card right now, it's an upright hermit. I might understand it as one. Yes, inverted is another way, reverse is another word for lots of this language. I like to use upright or reversed. Great. I think I went frozen, but hopefully I'm back. So I use upright and reversed. I I think that at the end of the day, it's up to the person who's reading it. I don't know if it's totally an opposite meaning. I don't usually think of it as opposite, but it can often be, if one understanding is sort of external, related to maybe how you're connecting with others. The reverse could be how you're connecting to yourself. It could be maybe I need to reframe my thinking. It often holds the same core meaning. It's just about the framework. And so often, if I'm doing a reading, when someone flips their card, if it's upright, we'll read sort of, I'll like help guide them through an upright reading. If it's reversed, I might help them reframe an understanding of what a reversed reading could look like. And at the end of the day, if one connects more to the other, like that, to each their own. I don't think there's a right or wrong way of reading tarot. So that's usually how I like follow the reverse upright type of thing. Any other questions or comments that folks have before we keep moving? Oh, and I saw some questions. Okay, so someone asked a question about the size of the deck. This is intentionally a large print deck. There's no rhyme or reason to the size of your tarot decks. I think it's really fun that it's big because you can see it and it feels fun to hold it in my hands with it being this big. But this deck is very small. It's very fun, travel size. It's like truly whatever size doesn't matter. In terms of using regular cards, that's a great question. I personally have never used a standard deck of cards to read tarot, mostly because it would not have enough cards as in a tarot deck. So that's just like my experience. But I think you could. I don't know the exact mapping, but I believe you can map the suits of a deck of cards onto the tarot suits. Hearts would be cups. I think diamonds would be coins. Um, and clubs and spades are one of the other two that I don't know off the top of my head. So I wouldn't use regular cards. Were there any other questions? Is tarot related to Kabbalah? I see that there was a conversation in the chat about that. Any other questions?
And then Naomi, I know you already answered this, but it's come up a couple times in the chat again, of people wondering like how many cards you need to do a reading.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Again, it's really up to the person. I'm sorry that I keep saying it's up to you. I think that's the beauty of tarot. It's up to whatever you want. Minimum would be one card. So that would, I think, be the minimum that I could just draw a card. I often like to, before I draw cards, put an intention into them. So I will shuffle the cards thinking about today. I'm thinking about love and relationships. And I put that intention as I'm shuffling, and then I draw a card. And that would be one card that maybe tells me what I want. When I'm reading with people, yes, kavanah, exactly. I love to put my kavanah into the cards. When I'm reading for folks, we'll often draw three to represent a blessing, challenge, action, or a past, present, future. Um, like I said, folks, I know people who will do a 5 card spread, a 10 card spread, 11 cards. There's really no, I'm sure there's a limit. I wouldn't draw every single card because that would take a really long time. But it really can be as few as 1, 3, 5. Yeah. So I would love to just feature a few. I'm going to go back to my presentation. Um,
Where and
this
when
is
did tarot originate?
Yes, it originated, they believe, around 14th century Italy as playing cards, and then it was adopted by outside folks from those communities who weren't playing cards, thought that those images could be used maybe for divination, and that's where like tarot got its start and has now trickled down, has a long history from there.
Is it popular in the East?
I think that tarot shows up all over the world in many different communities. And I'm sure, like, I am only speaking from an American perspective of the tarot that I have experienced here. I would be very curious to know what the decks look like in other countries. Tarot comes in many different languages. So I think it's popular all over.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I'm going to continue with my presentation. I'm biased, but I wanted to just feature a few of the tarot cards that have been speaking to me, have been a little piece of Torah for me lately. And then, it seems like there are so many tarot experts. If others at the end want to share their tarot cards, or if we want to draw a tarot card at the end, that can be our kavanah for Shavuot, we can conclude with that. But I just wanted to share a few tarot spotlights. One is specifically the Ace of Cups, this card. This key is actually on my 2025 mood board. So it's one that I see all the time when I'm looking at my vision for the year that I set out. The Ace of Cups is that, like, you can see it's literally overflowing with divine love and compassion. If we are the vessel, this love is flowing through us. And this is like a deep spiritual love, and you can't help but just let it flow. And it flows into this bigger body of love outside of us. We get to receive it, we get to give it, we get to be it, and our heart is continuously overflowing. And I think, especially right now, when I set this as an intention for myself back in, December 31st, who would have known what June 1st would have looked like? And this card has felt really grounding for me, and felt really challenging at times to feel the love maybe already that's in me, or to give that love to others, to not just want to keep it for myself, or to be open to the love that's there. But yeah, that has just been a card that has felt really meaningful for me this year. And I'm just featuring a few. These cards you'll see, these are just like random. Honestly, I got them off Pinterest, beautiful illustrations. Like I said, tarot cards can be beautiful. So you'll just see there's no pattern to the cards that I'm featuring other than they're pretty. So the next card I wanted to feature is the sun. I already talked about the sun. This has been another one that has felt like a real guiding light, no pun intended, for the last few years for me. The sun is all about radiance, abundance. It is giving you strength and tells you that no matter where you go or what you do, your positivity and your radiance and your energy follow you and bring you happiness and joy. And you get to radiate it out. And whatever like you stand for and whoever you are, you shine that brightly, and others get to bask in that light. And that feels so important. Right now, it can feel very scary to be Jewish and to be Jewish publicly and to let our light shine. And so I think the sun is a really impactful and important reminder that we should let it shine. And we can receive that energy from one another. But it also can be smaller. Sometimes it can feel hard to find our voice or however we're feeling. And the sun is just a reminder you have a lot of light inside of you, and it's important to let that shine. Okay, and then the next spotlight I wanted to show, the Three of Cups, I already alluded to it at the beginning. This to me is Miriam's tarot card. If we assigned tarot cards to some of the characters and archetypes in our Torah, I think this would be Miriam's. This is a card that celebrates friendship, sisterhood, creative collaborations. When it appears in a reading, so i.e., if you draw the Three of Cups, it is your encouragement to go out and gather with your friends, laugh, talk, share, create, be together. Again, allow that love. It's a cup. So just like the Ace of Cups, it's all about emotions, and it's allowing that love to sort of overflow and be together and to share that compassion with one another. And the last cards I wanted to spotlight are maybe two of the most feared, I put that in quotes, feared cards in a tarot deck. They're Death and the Tower. And I say fear just because they maybe come with their own bad reputation. I think that there's not a single bad tarot card, and I don't think that any of them need to feel scary, although when we draw them, it can bring a little feeling of fear, and it's okay to validate that fear. But when we see death, it can mean endings, change, transformation, transition. The Tower is connected to sudden change, upheaval, chaos, revelation, awakening. And those are hard. Those can bring up massive feelings of, again, fear that it's out of our control. When something ends, we don't get to control that change. We don't get to control upheaval. But when we accept it and when we just see it for what it is, we then open ourselves up for whatever gets to come next. And I think that that's really beautiful, that even if we draw the tower and it means literally the foundation that we've built our tower on is about to crumble and everything's going to fall, hold that with like a sense of maybe panic and dread, but then also hold it with what gets to be built next. And what does that mean about the foundation in the first place if it wasn't steady for us? So that's my reframing. I think that there's other ways to frame tarot. We can sit in the messiness and the darkness too. And sometimes it's important to just sit like everything is crumbling around me. And I just need to sit in that chaos before I move into revelation. And that can be that invitation too. So my final slide, these are just beautiful. These are illustrations from the Divine Feminine Tarot. I think it's a gorgeous. You can see the pomegranate again, because pomegranate is just connected to fertility, abundance, radiance. So that's my presentation. I saw a bunch of things were being put into the chat. Anyone else have a tarot card that they want to spotlight before? I think we'll conclude by drawing a card and just allowing that card to guide us as our kavana for the evening. But any further questions or comments that you would love to share before we conclude?
I would love to know what kind of reactions you get from other rabbinical students about tarot.
Yeah. Some I have read tarot for some of my classmates. So that is a fun thing that we get to share with each other. Some of my classmates, I think, don't even know that this is a passion of mine. So it can be something that I share with them. But yeah, I don't think I've ever had a reaction of, thankfully, it has often been acceptance or curiosity or excitement. I have yet to have a reaction that's negative. And I'm open to that and open to having conversations. Yes, Hebrew College is great and pluralistic, and I feel very grateful to be there. Miriam, your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to also share. I'm a rabbi on a college campus, and I posted a picture of all of my Oracle decks. I was tabling just to for no particular, we didn't have an event. There wasn't like anything specific. We were just like trying to be on campus. And so I brought my Oracle cards as like a way to get students to stop by the table because, they're famously not wanting to stop and talk to a rabbi. And so I posted a picture of all of my Oracle cards and our table on our social media. And I was asked by my superiors to take it down because Oracle is not like a mainstream Jewish thing. But all of the students who stopped at the table wanted to do a reading, every single one of them. And some people came to the table saying, I saw you had Oracle cards on the social media and I came for a reading. Like it was a really interesting, I don't know if it was generational necessarily. I don't know if it was just my supervisors being extra cautious about donors or parents or whoever. But it was an interesting experience.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it's also something that, whether this is a great opportunity that it sounds like many of us don't talk about it, whether it's because it feels like we shouldn't talk about it in Jewish spaces or we just don't know enough. And that's why I feel really grateful that there are so many resources out there that I get to learn myself and feel really comfortable in my, owning, again, like owning my identity as someone who is deeply proud of my connection with Torah and also feeling like tarot is a source of that wisdom for me. And yeah, there's, as Elisa just said in the chat, younger generations are really embracing these practices. And it's an opportunity again to bring them closer. Like Miriam, thank you for sharing that with us and doing the hard work of being on college campuses and meeting students where they are. And it's really great that you got to show them as a rabbi that they are enough and they can bring this connection that they feel with Judaism into Jewish spaces. David, I see that your hand is raised. And also, Jean, we'll get you next.
So I'm confused. How does tarot relate to the Torah? Is it a specific passages in the Torah, and you use the tarot to understand what the passage in the Torah is saying, or I'm confused.
I usually think of it the other way. I like to read the tarot cards that all come with their own meanings and to see what Torah I can connect it to. So similar to the Three of Cups, that does not help me read the story of Miriam, but when I think about female friendship and relationship, I can't help but think about the women gathering with their timbrels and singing and celebrating and dancing. Um, I would be so curious if someone could take a passage from Torah. I'm sure you can, taking lessons from Torah and mapping them back to lessons that we read in tarot. Tarot shows us life lessons, journeys that our soul is on. And when we read the Torah every year, our soul goes on a new journey every year. So I think it's more about the themes and the teachings and the wisdom that maybe we can see in both. Maybe we only see in one. And maybe tarot just gives us an access point to reading a little bit closer into Torah.
Is it
Or
connected?
Torah gives us, yeah.
Is it connected to Christian theology at all?
Tarot has ties to many different theological histories. I think if folks want to do more looking into it, I know we're going to wrap up shortly, but there's a lot of great online resources about the history of tarot and where the images come from. I know we didn't get a lot into the specifics of the imagery, but different decks definitely tie to different theologies. Jean, I see that your hand is raised.
Yes. I have two stories, but they're they're just sort of parenthetical to what you're talking about. This is an excellent talk, super interesting. One, when I was oh my gosh, right after college, I wanted to live in New York City, and I ended up living in a loft with this woman who, over time, with a friend, became enmeshed in reading playing cards. She had a book, and I've looked for it ever since, but I've never found it, about how you read playing cards to divine X, Y, or Z, and but then they spent all day doing it, and I think it was a sign of some mental illness. But, and so it became kind of dangerous because they were so completely drawn into the talking with each other and about it, that it prevented them from living a real life. But that was one story, not the good story. But I also was in Israel this past summer, and I was at a craft fair that was at a lecture series, okay? Craft fair lecture series, right. And I ended up sitting around and talking to this guy who made these cards, not tarot cards, but during the pandemic, when he had nothing else to do, he laid on his back and took pictures of the sky, of different clouds in the sky. And what he intended them for, as it turned out, was to be used as a way of entering a conversation in a psychotherapeutic venue. So you would look at the card, you would ask somebody, well, what card do you think you are today? Which one of these kinds of clouds are you? And then they could go from there. I could see using tarot in the exact same way. It sounds like that's exactly what you're doing, is that you're using tarot to bring the conversation, to focus a conversation that might be too amorphous otherwise.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great summation of that. I am sorry that we have to wrap up, but I know that the next session is starting soon. And while we were talking, I shuffled and I drew a card for us. So it's the Queen of Wands. If you can see, the Queen is sitting on her throne. She has a cat below her. The Queen of Wands focuses around courage, confidence, independence, determination. She's full of strength. She's full of courage that allows her to go through the day. Her courage enables her to really attune to her mind, to her spirituality, to her intuition, and to go forth and lead with that way. So I think, yeah, as we said in the chat, this feels like a really beautiful card to end on as we are receiving the Torah from Mount Sinai and in this moment of revelation. What a beautiful intention to do so with courage and to do so with confidence and determination and to make it our own. So thank you all for joining. I'm going to put my email in the chat. I would love to stay in touch. Feel free to reach out with more questions, wanting to continue the conversation. Wishing you all Chag Sameach, a Lila Tov, a good night if you're like me, about to get directly into bed. But thank you so much, everyone. It was wonderful to spend this moment of learning with all of you.
Thank you.
You.
Thank you so much, Naomi. That was so wonderful. We are Chag Sameach, everyone. We are on this room for another hour. And then room number 1 will be going all night long. So if you're staying up with us, we are so happy to have you here. We have 2 minutes until we will get started again. I will share that in this room, we are going to be talking about Whose Memory, Whose Archive, the Politics and Preservation and the Iraqi Jewish Archive with Danny English. And then in room number 1 with Rabbi Yoshi Zweibach is going to be talking about the Torah of Now, a 1-hour journey through Jewish texts for an uncertain time. So I'm going to post everyone in the meeting. I'm going to post the link to room 1 just in case anyone is curious to head over there. And we will see you in just a couple of minutes at the start of the